Welcome to Drip Trickle Flow Flood, a podcast that explores the power of multiple income streams. Whether you're an employee, a freelancer, an entrepreneur, creative, or an investor, we break down how money enters your life and what to do with it once it's yours. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Melissa, how's it going?
Good, good. I'm excited for this one because this is a topic that hits close to home for both of us, which is all about the starving artist mentality and the truth about freelance writing.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I've been living this a little bit, but I'm an infant compared to you. So I'm excited to learn along with our listeners about this topic with them.
Well, my belief around this, I get a little heated, so strap in, everybody. But my belief around this is that there does not need to be starving artists in the world. Creativity and business are not mutually exclusive at all. And if you want to make a living from your art, whether that's writing or filmmaking or music or painting, whatever that is, you want to start thinking like a business owner. So I think we should just start briefly by telling our own stories as artists ourselves. So Tony and I have both built careers. As Tony said, he is in the beginning phases of his, well, I wouldn't say necessarily beginning, but freelance writing.
I'm
5 years in.
But from a financial standpoint, I'd say I'm still in my infancy.
Well, he's still a writer. So he's 5 years in, like he said, from a financial standpoint, a little more in its infancy. For me, I am 10 years in for screenwriting and writing fiction novels, but I am close to 20 years in when it comes to just writing, period. So Tony, tell everybody a little bit about your freelance writing and your book.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to point out is that you said treat it like a business. So I've already learned my first lesson, because while I have thought of it from kind of the trickle standpoint, I haven't treated it like a business. I make decisions in this category that I wouldn't if I was treating it like a business. And part of that is because I was so surprised that I was even able to enter this world, that I was willing to essentially work for free just to get my work published. And I think that's true for a lot of people. And I don't know that it's fair. And a part of what I've been really trying to do, I've done some book talks and some writing. I talked to a university class a couple of times now, a journalism class, about freelance writing, and really trying to get it out there that if you have something to say, say it. And if you want to be a writer, be a writer. And I didn't have the confidence to do that, really. And I'm not going to get into the deep, dark, whatever process of how I really got into being a writer. But I'll just say that I was almost 40 before I had anything published. And it wasn't for a lack of desire. It was for a lack of confidence and not knowing what to do. So my book is A Wandering Mind. And I do talk a lot about kind of this process, and give credit to my English teacher and my mom, who basically are the reason I graduated high school and can read. And so I get into it a little bit. Maybe in a future episode, we'll dive a little deeper into that. That I just published a few months ago, and it's selling some copies. It's a drip in my life at this point. I hope that it turns into more, but the purpose of writing this book, A Wandering Mind, really was to get what I had wanted to say out there to the world, something for my daughter to be able to pick up and read. And it's a series of short essays, and there's poems in there, and then quotes by others. And it's a lot of self-deprecating humor. One of the stories is I decided to buy a VW van down in San Diego. We live up in the Pacific Northwest. And my wife goes, "We don't need that van." And I go, "Well, I'm just going to go check it out." She's like, "You're going to fly to San Diego and not bring the van back? How else are you getting home?" Right? So fly down there with a buddy, buy the van. It stinks, but it ran, and we get it home. And then as I'm writing this piece, I was literally sitting in the back of it on this pop-up table, which I adored. And waiting for my wife and the tow truck driver to come get me because there was smoke billowing out of the back. So it's the story of getting the van and what lesson did I learn from this? So that's kind of what the book is made up, and it really is all over the place. Definitely, I have a bit of a wandering mind. From the freelance writing piece, I got into it really kind of during COVID, started writing for free to get my foot in the door. And then I've been writing for, and it's slowly built, but I've been writing for around 5 publications fairly consistently now for about 5 years. And some of them are very consistent. I have a monthly piece that I write for them. Some of them are quarterly. So it's not consistent for me. It's a trickle as far as an income stream goes, but every month I can rely on some money trickling in from that as long as I'm producing the writing. And it's been really exciting. And what I've learned is just by asking and sticking your neck out there and making the connections and posting your articles, the opportunities are out there. And there's nothing more exciting for me than when somebody goes, "Oh, I saw your article in this publication." I'm still 5 years in, blown away that people are reading my writing. And I think you should talk more about how you can make more money from it. I have experienced a couple situations writing website copy or whatever where you can get paid a little bit more. Um, but I think you would speak much better to that of how someone could actually live off of this and support a family and all the things.
Yeah. Well, I love all of your work, and I'm so glad that you pursued this path, even if it's still a trickle right now. But I think in the future it will balloon into potentially a flow or flood. So for me, I got started in public relations, copywriting. I worked in the corporate world for some time and also spent a lot of time in book publicity. So, working with lots of New York Times bestselling authors on the publicity side. So, I've always had my hand in writing. And as you said, Tony, those are lucrative areas to go into, right? If you're going to go and get that corporate money, there's definitely a lot of money there, and consistent money. So that is certainly a flow, either by a paycheck, a W-2, or in my case, I started my own business when I was 26 years old. So my flow really came from clients that were either authors or corporations or small business owners, professional speakers, etc. So as I mentioned in our first episode, when I started my business, I did have trouble with, pitching myself, charging real money for my work. I didn't think I was worth it. And even though I was confident in my skills, I just didn't think I was worth being paid, which is very odd. But that was my money mindset at the time. And I did a lot of work on that through therapy so that I could get to a place where I was able to increase those rates and do so confidently. And then fortunately, I did all of that work before I decided to pursue a screenwriting career, which I did not start pursuing until I was 35 years old. So anybody that tells you that it's too late to go after a creative writing career is wrong. You can hear that from Tony as well. He said that he didn't get published till he was close to 40. Similar thing as me, I was 35 when I started. That doesn't mean I had something produced when I was 35. That just meant that's when I started pursuing that path. So it is not too late. And in fact, in my opinion, and many others' opinions, your art actually gets richer with age. So don't let age stop you. That is a little bit of a side note, but I think it's important for everybody to hear. I felt very lucky that I had worked on my mindset around money before I started pursuing screenwriting, because it's actually exactly what Tony just said. There was a period of time that lots of writers are willing to work for free or for very, very low rates because they are just so freaking excited to do it, or even shocked that anybody wants to read their words. Unfortunately, and this is not the entire industry, but there are certain folks in the film industry, in the entertainment world, who are a bit predatory and will take advantage of that. And so if you don't go in with the confidence of, I am a writer and I want to sell my projects and I am going to charge my rates. If you're not adhering to what those rates are, if you're not adhering to a contract, then that's an issue, right? There are folks out there that will gladly take advantage of that. So I can say, me personally, I've had a great deal of success as a screenwriter. I still do. I have 14 produced films. I also have many other projects I've sold that just didn't get made, but you still get paid for those. I have also lost out on plenty of deals and burned some bridges because I absolutely refuse to work for free or refuse to work for low rates. And unfortunately, that's just something that you have to have very steely confidence in this industry in order to advocate for yourself as a writer who deserves to be paid. And then when it came to my books, so I did not publish my first book until I was in my 40s. So much like Tony, there you go, doing this later in life. And in fact, I made a very conscious decision around my books because I, in screenwriting, have to work with a lot of stakeholders. So when you are a screenwriter, you need to work with studios, networks, development executives, producers, director, actors. So all of those folks are stakeholders in your work, much like any business who might have a board, right? Or lots of people that you're working with. It works very similarly. So when it came to my books, and this isn't to say that I will never publish with a traditional publisher, but I really was craving a way to put my art out in the world with less stakeholders, or at least with stakeholders of my choosing. So what that means is, like, I get to choose my editors, I get to choose my beta readers, I get to choose my cover designer. So that was really important for me just for this series of books that I put out there. So I publish in the paranormal romance space under my own name, and I treat that very much as a business. And I have a whole construct of that, which we can go into in a future episode if people are interested in learning more about book publishing specifically. But that's essentially my background in writing, and it is made up of multiple drips, trickles, flows, and floods. All of those belong in that world because I have a drip from a pen name that's not doing very well right now, but hopefully will and turn into something else in the future. Then I have trickles that come from certain books that I've written. And then I have flows and floods, which belong in my client work, both on the publicity side, copywriting side, and then also in my screenwriting work. And then for certain books that I write that just earn more. I think sometimes people get a little tripped up when it comes into creative work and freelancing, whether they want it to be a business or a hobby. Do you ever deal with that, Tony?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. First, what's the name of your book series, Melissa?
Oh, so it's so it is the Lockwood universe. So we have the Lockwood trilogy, which is Control, Unravel, Undone. And then there are two standalone novellas that are in that world. One is Black Sea and the other one is Fairest Dreams.
Very cool. Yeah, and everybody should check those out. This isn't necessarily the category that I would always read or normally read, but they definitely hook you in or entertaining. And Melissa and I had become friends, but what forced me to, or what prompted me to really read the book, and I read it, I think, over a weekend, is that I said, Melissa, I should write an article about your book release. And so I said, well, I better read that book before I write the articles. So to get into this, as far as when I first got into it, I had almost no expectations. I was not a good reader, not a good writer, really struggled with that growing up. So from standpoint of getting into it, I was just excited that someone was publishing my work. And then when I realized that I could make some money from it, I said, well, this is a cool side hustle for me. And it really is a side hustle. I have rental houses that I manage and a construction company that I run. And I, I think at last count, I have 5 jobs. And
So many jobs.
and we might talk about this in a future episode, but I'm working on at least one more job that has been approved, and just sent an email this morning about a potential buying a business that I don't know. Lindsay's like, "What on earth are you talking about?" Lindsay's my wife. Anyways, so I didn't really think of it as a business, although as I have gotten into it and become more established, actually getting to the point where publications were reaching out to me asking for me to write for them. I have thought about it more from a financial standpoint, and whether I treat it like a business, I do on some point in the fact that money's coming in and I write off expenses associated with it. And and I am now more, especially when I'm writing certain articles, I do think about the value of my time. Where when I first started, I didn't think about that at all. If I was making $10 an hour writing a story, I was making $10 an hour writing a story. Now, I would say the big exception for this for me is I don't live off of this. This isn't the income that my family needs to eat. And so I have some articles that I write that are not financially realistic. I do a lot of outdoor writing. So I might go paddleboarding for 8 hours. That might be a little extreme, but definitely 4 hours. I paddle the entire length of a local lake, right? And so my hourly rate on that article was not very good. I had one I wrote about outdoor all seasons paddleboarding. I spent more on the wetsuit get up than I made on the article. So that would not be a good business. Although I got the wetsuit, which I wanted so I could paddleboard year round. And I was able to subsidize that wetsuit by writing this story. And so a lot
That's
of it
cool.
is, I got my first call it international articles published last year. We took a trip to Europe where we went to Ireland and Italy. And I was able to publish 2 articles, one on a hike in Ireland and one on exploring Mount Vesuvius. And so that was pretty cool. So a lot of it for me on those types of articles, I don't think about it from a financial standpoint. I love going and doing those things. I really enjoy telling the story. I call myself an accidental photographer. I've now had tons of pictures published, full size pictures in magazines. And I really just had to kind of do that and learn it because of my writing. I have other articles that I definitely think about the time factor. I do a lot of profiles and I write consistently for some publications and I really enjoy them, although it's not going and playing out in nature, right? It's an interview, it's writing the content, it's editing, there's work to it. And so I do like to get compensated for my time in a fair rate for those pieces. Even though I do enjoy it, that has gotten, I would say, beyond the hobby level for those types of articles. One thing I wanted to point out on this is if you're getting into it, W-9 is how I'm paid, which means I am a freelance contractor for these publications. I'm not a W-2 employee. And so if you get into this, filling out a W-9 is probably a pretty common way that you'll get paid. So just something to think about.
Good point.
Yeah. I mean, you've obviously been treating it like a business for a long time now.
Yes. Yes, definitely. But I do want to say, though, that there is, and I'm glad that you answered the way that you did, because I just want to point this out for anyone listening, that there's really nothing wrong with your art being a hobby. And there's also nothing wrong with picking and choosing the projects that you want to do because they feel fun versus because you want to make money, right? So much like you said, Tony, there are things that maybe profiles that you're doing that you're like, I absolutely want to be paid for this. And then there are times when it just gets you out on the water for 4 hours and it's an excuse to buy a wetsuit and you just say, shrug, I'm going to do that. That's also okay. The great news is we get to choose how we want to run our business, essentially our freelance writing business. And we get to choose how we want things to drip, trickle, flow, and flood into our lives. So I do just want to point that out, first of all. Where it can get a little dicey is that there are plenty of artists, writers, filmmakers, etc., who definitely want to be making their money from their art. So they want the flow to come from there, maybe a flood as well, but they definitely want it to be a consistent flow of income. And they're still doing what you just mentioned, Tony. They're still doing the trade-off pieces, right? They're still doing the paddle boarding and buying the wetsuit and losing money, and then not looking at other streams or ways that they might be able to bring things in, or they're undercharging. And I say this as someone who's definitely done this in the past, so I'm right there with you. A couple of things that come up a lot with folks who come to me, clients that I have, or just people in general that get in touch with me wanting to know how to turn their art into a business, is beliefs like money's going to magically follow if you're just good enough. You absolutely need to work on your craft. So I don't want to put that aside and say that it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. You want to be as good of a writer as you can be. You want to be as good of a painter as you can be, good as of a filmmaker, whatever your art is. However, art is incredibly subjective. And we see this all the time, right? There are people who love books and hate books, people that love movies and hate movies. The same one, right? You'll see all sorts of reviews from 5-star to 1-star. And that also takes place on the side of people paying you. So I can tell you, as someone who goes out and tries to sell scripts, for example, I will get feedback that spans everything from this is the greatest thing I've ever read to this is the worst thing I've ever read, and please don't ever come in my office again. So I will hear all of those things on a single script, and that is to be expected on every project. So it really doesn't always boil down to how good the work is, because good in art is subjective. So we can't count on the fact that money will follow just because it's great writing. There has to be other things that layer on top of that. Another misconception that I hear a lot is, or just belief that's not serving artists, is that business and creativity don't mix, and that by promoting your work somehow makes you less of a serious artist. That is definitely not true at all. In fact, I think you're doing a disservice if you're not promoting your work, because that means that more people can't find it. And I'm a big believer in, you just want your words to find the right people. And unfortunately, those people will never see it if you're not putting yourself out there. So it does not make you less of an artist at all. It doesn't make you unserious or any of those things by promoting your art. You definitely have to put your work out there into the world. So let's talk a little bit about turning your art into a business. So again, this is not for the hobbyists. If you want to stay in the hobby space, awesome. Do that. There is no shame in that. I think that's great. But if you're somebody who wants a flow or a flood, or honestly even a trickle from your writing, you really want to stop thinking of yourself as just a writer or just an artist. You can definitely call yourself those words, absolutely. In a public facing forum, I certainly say I'm a screenwriter and author, but I am a brand and a business owner. Behind the scenes, that is what's happening. This is very much constructed as a business. Tony asked me earlier what the name of my books are. So I write in the Lockwood universe, which is an elite private boarding school world that I've created. And there are multiple stories in that. Lockwood is a brand and a business. Is it my art? Yes, but it's really a business. And that is how I think about it. So if you want to create that flow or flood for your art is number one, definitely think about multiple streams of income. Good news is you are listening to this podcast, and this is all we talk about is how to create your drip, trickle, flow, and flood. And then the 7 different ways that you can do that, which we outlined in our previous episode. So don't rely on one gig, one client, one world, one book, one script. If it was Tony who does a lot of freelance writing, if he was only relying on one magazine that hires him, that's not going to bring in very much, right? He spreads himself around to all different all different publications, so he's not reliant on one area. So you really want to think about varying your client base or varying your stakeholders when it comes to this. And you also want to think about, are there ways you can be making money off of your art that doesn't necessarily fall into maybe where your passion would lie? That doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it. It just means, do I love writing romance novels? Yes. Do I love writing thriller novels? Yes. I also write for clients. I am a speechwriter. I do a lot of personal brand ghostwriting. All of those things bring great income into my world. None of that is selling out, which is a common thing I will hear for artists is like, you sold out. You went and got another client in the corporate space. No, that is not a belief that's going to serve you. It is being smart and strategic when you do that. And you can also think about it as a funding source. So if you are someone that says, oh, I long term do not want to be writing for corporate clients, I only want to write my fantasy fairy novels, great. So then you look at that income that you're getting from your corporate work as a funding source. Look at it as an investment that you're making into your business. We all need investments. We need money. Sometimes that's money that we take out of our own accounts. Sometimes that's an investor that we get. Sometimes it's a loan. Sometimes it's a credit card. There's no judgment on any of those things. However, a great investor can be those corporate clients. Sometimes for folks that work day jobs, W-2 income, that can be your investor into this writing that you want to do. Again, it's thinking about it as a business and where is that income coming in? It's all serving the greater good of whatever your art is that you want to put out into the world. Also, pricing yourself, stop undercharging, do not lowball, thinking that it will land you more work, and be very cautious as well with anyone that you are working with and offering those lower rates just because it's a job you want to take. I think you have to make that decision yourself, but I'm always a big fan of, if it's a situation where something like Tony brought up earlier with the paddleboard article, the way I would structure that is I might say, this is something I really want to do. This is a publication I really want to work with. The rate they're offering me is not there. So what I'm going to do when I construct the deal is say, on this first article, I'm happy to do it for your budget, which is X. If we do any future articles together, it will be my normal rate of X, right? And that way that's all constructed with them in your deal so that they don't come back to you a month later and say, oh, well, now I want to throw you on a snowmobile and, and you're going to lose money again because we're not going to pay you very well. So again, it's okay to sometimes offer that lower rate. Some people will call it a loss leader, something that can bring an opportunity to your world, but you just have to be smart in how you construct that deal so that the next time it doesn't come back and bite you. And then finally, when you're thinking of your art as a business or turning your art into a business, you have to market yourself. You have to be visible. People need to know that you exist. And that is also not selling out when you do that. It is smart. If you don't work on your visibility, like I said earlier, then your fans cannot find you and you're doing them a disservice. So as much as you might hate posting on social media, and that's not the only way to get visible, by the way. It's just one way. Get yourself comfortable with putting yourself out in the world in at least one way. And there are many ways that you can do that. But you want to be visible. You want to be putting yourself out there because otherwise, folks just cannot find you.
So, Melissa, there was so much gold in there. I'm probably going to need to, well, I will definitely listen to this again when I listen to the final edit. But I mean, we're definitely gonna have to do another podcast digging into some of these individual pieces a little more because just there is so much there. I want to comment on your marketing piece. Look me up on social media or whatever. Go to my website, TonyMosseri.com. Look me up on Instagram and then go to all of Melissa's stuff and you will see the dramatic difference. Mine is slightly above garbage, I hope. And Melissa's is incredible. Every time she posts something, I'm like, geez, I mean, this is just so, so professional, so engaging. All the things where I'm like trying to find another spot in my house to take a picture of an article, kind of a thing. But it's just, and I'm not comfortable with it, So I appreciate you saying that. I'm so uncomfortable putting myself out there. I follow all these different authors and they're posting about their book every single day and have new creative ways to do it. I hardly ever post about it, and I will post an article one time when I write it, and a lot of it is just the uncomfortableness of it is I'm worried that people don't want to hear it and don't want to see it, and I would say my book sales reflect it pretty accurately. So I think that that's a huge point that it's not selling out. It's awesome, and people want to see it. They really do, and because I'm not comfortable with it doesn't mean I'm right in not being comfortable with it. I think that it's really cool, and I follow a bunch of people, and I want them to post. I want them to tell me what they're doing. That's why I'm following them. I listened to an episodes of The Economics of Everyday Things. It's one of my favorite podcasts, and they did one on art and making money from art. And one of the women on there that they talked to, she wanted to become an artist trying to figure out how to make money. Well, she has gotten in with Marriott hotels. I might not have been Marriott, but some big hotel chain. And not only do you get to sell your art in every one of those hotel chains, you can sell it on every floor of every hotel. And it's really cool. And again, is that selling out? No. Does that mean that tons of people are seeing your art? Yeah. And it's an income for her, and it allows her to do her art. So it's really cool that's out there. And I love podcasts like that one. That one is just done really, really well, but it does highlight a lot of just these things that I would have never thought of. And so it is really cool. And so I appreciate a lot of what you just said and not undervaluing your time. All of those pieces that you hit on, I think are really important for people to think about.
Thanks. I like that story about the artist in the hotel. I hear that a lot from artists that is selling out. And we'll go into this a bit more. We have an episode coming up where we talk about the people you surround yourself with. And this is a key example of that. So when you are building your drips, trickles, flows, and floods, it really comes into play when you look at the folks that are in your world and what they are saying. If you have people in your world that you are surrounded by all the time who are constantly telling you, oh, that's selling out, or you talked about your book too much, that's annoying, or whatever they're saying, are those people you should have in your world?
Yeah, and that's the negative side of it, right? There's also the positive of surrounding yourself people that are going to encourage you.
Yes.
I know so many artists that they do incredible work, and I'm always like, man, put it out to the world. You've got your flow with your job. You're already doing this art, whether it's a photographer or artist, or I know some potters. Like, go put it in an art gallery, start an Etsy page, start an Instagram, whatever it is, get it out there. And if nobody buys anything, well, then it's going to sit where it's sitting right now. But if people start buying it, maybe it's a drip, maybe it's a trickle, or maybe it turns into a flow and it changes your life. And so I think surrounding yourself, and again, we can talk about this later, but with those positive people that are encouraging
Yes.
and support you that, it's nerve-wracking putting your writing out there or any piece of art to be judged, and judge they will. I always just when people express that to me that they're too nervous to put their writing out there or something, I talk to a lot of people about writing now, and I love to. And it's one of those things where I go, well, who cares? Like if there's a million things to read, if they don't want to read what I wrote, they don't have to. There's no
Yes.
shortage of writing out there. They can go read whatever. Uh, so I think it's cool that you go at it with such a confident stance. And I think that's a learned skill. I'm sure maybe you were born with some of it, and I think a lot of people are born with it, but it also, I think, can be learned.
I think so. I definitely don't think I was born with it because my self-confidence used to be in the gutter when I was for a big chunk of my
Mhm.
life. But the way that I look at it is if somebody doesn't like the art I put into the world, it's just not for them. And I think there's no judgment I don't take that personally. And also, I think that's valid and fair. So I run into a lot of fellow authors and writers who get really upset when they get bad reviews on their stuff. And I get it. It can sting. That's also valid and fair that they might feel that way. But it really is just saying, well, it's okay. It just wasn't for them. And if we think about ourselves, I've read plenty of books that I did not enjoy. Some of them are mainstream hits. Does that make me wrong or right? No, it just is. It just is my opinion. Like I said earlier in this episode, art is subjective. So it's not personal. It just isn't for that person. So it just becomes, in my opinion, a bit of a muscle that you're working on consistently. The more bad reviews you get, the more rejection or failures you get, the easier it rolls off. So I'm a fan of any creative putting themselves in positions where they have to fail or get rejected. Anything that might do that. And that's not always in a creative field. So, like, that will happen in your work. But can you, for example, play a sport where, for example, basketball, where you're going to miss a whole bunch of shots? So, that is also working on that muscle of, oh, I didn't make that shot again and again and again. And then it just becomes inherent to you that when you're for example, pitching, let's say, a book to a publisher and you're getting no, 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 well, it just rolls off a lot easier because you are used to that fail. So go for no, fail upwards, whatever you want to say. There's lots of ways that people phrase it, but I'm a big fan of that.
I've been coaching basketball for, I don't know, about 20 years now, maybe a little more. And Michael Jordan, one of his most famous quotes is, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." And it's transferable to everything. So I
I
think that
love that quote.
that's great for artists to take the shot, stick it out there, let the world see it. And if nothing else, we need it. Maybe, what was it? I think Phoebe from Friends was really upset because somebody wasn't Ross when he was playing on the keyboard, he wasn't appreciated in his own time. And she thought that was the best thing ever. So you never know.
You never, ever know. Well, I think to wrap up this episode, we can just say I love the Michael Jordan quote. And we can also say that artists don't have to be starving. So if you want to make money from your craft, all you need to do is start shifting your mindset to that of a business owner. So if you are freelance writing, this does not need to be feast or famine by any means. And when you build those multiple income streams, when you charge what you're worth, when you put yourself out there, then you can turn that creativity into a thriving business. So that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed what we talked about, we would love to hear from you. You could leave a review, subscribe to our podcast, follow us, connect with us online, and we'll see you next time for more Drip Trickle Flow and Flood.